The COYGIG Pod
on Off the Ball
in association with Cadbury, official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Katie McCabe, a huge goal.
I'm very proud of the team's performance.
We're going to go out there to beat them. We're going to try and beat them.
Hello and welcome to the COYGIG Pod. I'm Karen Duggan, taking over the hosting hot seat from Kathleen McNamee today, and joining me today is our expert panel of Scarlett Heron and Jamie Finn. How are we, guys?
Good. That was a nice intro.
Thanks. I think that's pretty much my job done now. I can just leave it up to you. So coming up, we'll have, as usual, all the weekend's analysis from the WSL and our team of the week. But I suppose, just to kick off, the hot topic of conversation this week is going to be Eileen Gleeson's selection. There's not much going on the domestic front other than that. Still waiting on a good few managers to be announced in terms of the Women's League of Ireland here. But what are we thinking about it? We see that there's been some reports that Aoife Manion is going to be out. United aren't really releasing the status of her injury, but she wasn't in the weekend's game for Man United. Is this a cause for concern at all, Jamie? I know that we kind of talked about, Louise Quinn is out as well and that, but it's probably one of our stronger areas of the pitch. I think if we look at it, if we take it from like a let's not get panicked viewpoint.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, it's a kind of a strange one. Obviously, they're not really kind of what is wrong with Aoife. You could take that as a positive. Maybe they're just like seeing how this week or two goes, and then she could be announced in the squad. Yeah, you wouldn't know. But yeah, like you said, I think there's experience in that role. And obviously without Louise as well, that experience that she brings. Maybe you're looking at the likes of Fahy stepping up there as well. Obviously, she missed out on starting one of the games. So yeah, I think we're kind of stacked in that position.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make about Niamh Fahy coming in, because she is that kind of steady and influence. Now, we saw that, Jessie Stapleton was given a lot of more game time than Niamh Fahy in the last camp, and she can play that position as well. So it'll be interesting to see if she's still going to push through with Jessie, or if she thinks just based on the occasion, whereas that Niamh Fahy might be the strongest person coming in. So that'll be an interesting selection one. But Scarlett, it's not all bad news. We are seeing a lot of players returning from injury. So notably, we've got Ruesha Littlejohn, who started to get minutes. We've got Megan Connolly, who seems to be, after going from being injured to taking the team by storm over in Italy, and Megan Campbell. So if we're talking about experience, there's three players who, if selected, would be very experienced. Would you expect to see them in the match or in the squad for the Wales matches?
Yeah, I think we've seen Megan Connolly, Megan Campbell, utilised in sort of latter stages of games. Not really a starting player, but maybe with Aoife Manion out, you could see that, I suppose. As we said there as well, Jessie Stapleton has stepped into that right back role at times as well. So there's loads of options. I don't think obviously there's concern mainly about the back line, but as you said, like there's so many bodies in there that are able to do defensive duties. And I think even Eileen Gleeson said after the game against Georgia, when she first came in, there was sort of a lack of that defensive role and defensive players, and now she has her pick even for squad selection. So as you said, I don't think it's an area for concern. I think there's loads of bodies in there that can give us a hand out and like make their play for the starting 11. And if they perform well against Wales, and they get through, you're trying to cement your place in there. So some players will be trying to take this opportunity now, if players out, to try to cement their place in the squad and get their jersey.
Yeah, and there's certainly options. I know you always want a settled starting 11, but you're looking at the likes of Heather Payne and how well she's done in the past couple of weeks for Everton, and she didn't start the last couple of games, so that'll be another selection headache. Then again, Leanne Kiernan getting more and more game time with Liverpool. So we will focus on the positives. We did get some questions in on X from some of the COYGIG listeners, and just focusing on Wales for a little bit and the threat that they pose. Cited that they have like a top class manager, former Canadian defender, Rian Wilkinson, who of course was appointed around the time where we had that loss to Wales early in the year. Who do you see as kind of the key threats from Wales? Obviously, we see a lot of those players in and around the WSL and abroad. A lot of them are playing at a high level. Jamie, who would be the standout player that you think we're kind of saying we shouldn't focus on the Wales game. We should go, or Wales team, we should go and play our own game. But they do pose their own threat. So who's the one that stands out for you?
Yeah, they certainly will. They certainly will pose a lot of threats. I think they kind of are similar to us in that
Hmm.
respect. I think they have a few players in the WSL, the Championship, America. So kind of similar to us in that way. But I think Kerry Holland is one that we need to look out for. She is so strong physically on the ball. Very good passer, good finisher. And I think she's the one to kind of look out for. Obviously, Jess Fishlock. Will she be fit for the game? Not sure.
Well, we know she did a lot of damage to us in Tala that night.
Yeah,
Fishlock, we were kind of saying, God, at her age, but she really taught us a lesson that night. It was a very different team. I know, like, we focused on that as a very, very bad result, but I think there was something like 7 players that started that game who didn't start in our last game. So we're a very different looking Irish team, as much as they've developed under the new management. But I think you're right. Holland, obviously, she was the one who got that all
yeah,
important goal in extra time, that win over Slovakia. So she's going to be on a massive buzz. So I think it's going to be a big one. But Ingle is out. So again, there's a top class player that you're taking out of the midst. If we had lost a player like that, we'd be suffering a little bit. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think we'll probably do more analysis when the squad is announced, because again, there's a lot of people calling, looking at Saoirse Noonan getting another goal at the weekend, how well Emily Whelan's been doing, and those attacking kind of places can still be up for grabs, especially if we're going to be replacing some of the midfield selections. If Ruesha Littlejohn and Megan Connolly come in, like we expect them to. So not the easiest job for Eileen Gleeson, but I guess a good complaint to have. So we will look forward to that during the week and give plenty more reaction next week. So now we will move on to Team of the Week. Scarlett in the hot seat again, and another great job. It was more of a goal heavy this week for you. So I think it was probably harder to pick the forward players than last week, where we saw a lot of big defensive performances. So do you want to take us through the team there?
Yeah, so a very different shape. I've kind of gone with a box in the midfield. So we have Courtney Brosnan in goal, probably the player of the week without any bias. Obviously, that double save was the one that kind of made the headlines during the week, and she was just like, she was brilliant in goal. Obviously, getting the win for everyone, so that was huge for them. As well as that, in the back three, we have Anna Patton, we have Justine Van Herhermet, and we have McLaughlin as well. Who obviously played very well in sort of the right back position, but she's shifting into a back three this week. We have in midfield then we have Micah Hamano, we have Katrina Gorey, we have Fran Kirby, and then I've also lost my actual presentation. Here we are, and we have Frida Manham for Arsenal as well. And then on the left we have Rachel Daly. On the right we have Ferreira from Man United, and then we have Myra Ramirez up front.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of attacking talent there, but I think you did have to try and fit them in this week. But yeah, we'll just focus on the defence for a second, but in a positive sense, because Anna Patton and McLaughlin both got themselves on the score sheet. Jamie, just to look at the Everton effect, though, we've picked the goalkeeper and a centre back from Everton, and with reason. I mean, it was a win, but it was a massive defensive display from Everton, and it's what they needed, and they needed Courtney probably more than they would have wished, but she is that player for them, isn't she?
yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a great display by Courtney, and obviously leading into the international break, that's obviously really welcomed,
Yeah.
that confidence under her belt. Not that she needs it, but it's really nice that she can have that display. And yeah, just it was kind of wave after wave for Liverpool attack, and like Scarlett was saying there, that double save from Courtney. It was so good. I think the commentator was saying like that stuff you do in training, that's the save down, save again. Like it
Hmm.
was super. And then obviously her back line in front of her were really solid as well. And yeah, they fought really hard for those 3 points, and it'll just lift a bit of pressure off them down there. Because
Hmm.
as we said before, it's so difficult to be in that position, and just getting those 3 points just lifts a bit of off their shoulders. And obviously Courtney was at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and just speaking of the relegation battle, Scarlett's going to get into it more later, but we have Katrina Gorry from West Ham in there, and rightly so. She was really dragging West Ham through that game, and then she went off. And of course, Brighton were obviously very, very persistent and they got their goal in the end, maybe deserving so. But throughout all the games, despite them not winning, she really has been the talisman there, Scarlett.
Yeah, like as you said, two great goals. Obviously, one was deflected, but two great strikes, like from far out. Hit the crossbar as well with another one, so it could have been a hat trick of sort of long shot goals for her. And like as you kind of mentioned there, she just dragged West Ham on her back, like absolutely carried them through the game. And she's probably sitting. I think she came off injured. I think she hurt her
Hmm.
shoulder in a tackle, but she's going. I'd say she's just sitting on the bench thinking, how did we not get anything from
Yeah,
this after all the effort? Like, but as we spoke about, like Brighton have been really, really good this season as well, and that's sort of, I think, a turning point for them being able to drag out 3 points from a game like that. Obviously, it's a really, really tough game to get anything from when West Ham are coming at you as well. And but when you have the likes of Fran Kirby, the flick for the assist was class, and then the goal as well was just so composed. So to have a player like that in their arsenal is so so good for Brighton, and her really it really just showed the quality of her. I know Emma
yeah.
Carroll always goes on about how good Fran Kirby is and stuff, and you really seen the class of her last weekend. So
Yeah, that was it. It was the just that moment that there was no panic in the box and she just had space and you can't give her that and it was hit off the post. It was a really, really good strike. And then another person who's a bit like experienced, we'll call them, Rachel Daly doing the business there for Aston Villa as well. Just to touch on the two people you picked for Chelsea, and we'll get more into the game afterwards, but Hamano and Ramirez. I mean, relatively new to the Chelsea team, and it's such a hard team to break into. But particularly Hamano, she's a very, very young player, and you kind of think it's hard for young players to break into that Chelsea team. But her effects since the start of the season, having had very little WSL experience, Jamie, how hard is it to have that in your, yes, well, let's call it the end of her first year. It's really, really impressive, isn't it, for a young player?
Yeah, absolutely, especially in a team like Chelsea, just yeah, the players that you look around and you train with, and to try and break into a team like that is so difficult, but you just need to have the focus and the will to keep going. And yeah, she was in there at the weekend and thought she bossed it absolutely for such a young player. And then yeah, speaking about Ramirez, she's just so strong, so physical, like just to take her goal like that in a game like that. She played so well. And yeah, you think of like Sam Kerr coming back into the team, like it's crazy. Do you play them both? And I think, or I don't know. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. You
Yeah, I
think,
think you find a way, don't you? It's if you
yeah,
have that quality, I think you do just find a way. And Ramirez, it wasn't just her goal though. She was involved in so much for her play. She really took the game to, and we kind of had it pegged as Ramirez versus Shaw. And Ramirez was so clinical in that one chance that did open up for her, and it just wasn't Bunny Shaw's day, which we're not used to seeing. So we'll get on to more analysis on that a little bit later. But before we do, Scarlett, we just want to talk a bit more about the relegation battle. So we've seen Chelsea pull away a little bit at the top of the league, and that's kind of familiar territory, but it's very, very interesting at the bottom of the table at the moment.
yeah, so obviously there's sort of the table's kind of split now a little bit. We have like an established sort of top four, which Arsenal are just creeping into now.
Hmm.
We kind of have a middle tier then of like United, Spurs, and Liverpool, and then we have a bottom five. And I think the bottom five, although Spurs are close enough, I think the Spurs only have 8 points, and then Villa might have seven. But it's those five teams I think that are going to be sort of up and down for the rest of the season. I think Villa will be okay. Like just looking, they've had the hardest fixtures out of the five based on just who you're playing. Um, and they've done like reasonably okay. Obviously, they're struggling a bit with Robert DePau sort of trying to get used to the WSL. I think even he said in an interview that he didn't expect it. Like he came from, I think, the Dutch league and the Bundesliga as well. And he was saying if any team in the WSL went to the Bundesliga that they'd be challenging for a title, whether that's Palace, Leicester, whoever. So that just sort of shows the competitiveness of the league. But given the players they have, as we mentioned earlier, Rachel Daly, like the likes of her, even Anna Patten at the back, like they're quite strong in central areas. So
Yeah, I
I
think Jordan Nobbs deserves a shout there as well. She's
yeah,
been really,
definitely.
really good as well. And like you say, their performances have been good. It's just that lack maybe of experience that the manager hasn't quite got yet, but it looks like it could click.
Yeah. And like that's really what I'm looking at here. And I think the main points I took from these were obviously then the next four teams. We have Everton, West Ham, Palace, and Leicester. Palace, I also think will do okay. They've kind of got used to the league. It's taken them a while, but I think now, like they got their first win a few weeks ago, and they've just sort of been trying to pick out draws since then. But I think they are going to lose to a lot of big teams by big margins. But I think they'll be able to sort of beat the other teams in the bottom sort of side of the league. Um, and then I'm looking at Everton, and I actually looked at the goals that they're conceding. They've actually conceded half of their 13 goals, well, nearly half, six of their 13 goals in the first 11 minutes of the game, which is like, I thought was really interesting, like, because you're coming out to a game, I think they conceded in the first minute once, the fourth, fifth minute, and it's just way too early to be conceding. You know, that first 15 minutes of a game, you're trying to settle into it, and you're going 1-0 down, you're on the back foot straight away. So I think Everton will really struggle there. I don't know what you think about that, and as well as that, they're lacking goals. So obviously got their first win the weekend, but I don't know what you think about Everton. But I just think they're struggling really apart from the win.
Yeah, I think we'll pick you up on that because Everton obviously got their first win at the weekend. Now they got that with very little possession. I mean, Liverpool had 68% possession. That's such an interesting point you make about the early goals, and I think it's really pertinent because this is the one time where they haven't conceded early and they've gone a goal up. And the difference between going a goal down and going a goal up psychologically is massive. Jamie, we've all been there where you're feeling the pressure and you go a goal down and that mountain just seems higher. Whereas when you get that goal and you get that bit of luck, you have something to hang on to. And Everton have not given themselves a chance to have that at all yet, because like you say, Scarlett, they've just been conceding way too early. And that one difference led them to get a win this week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember my first year in the WSL, and Harriet Scott always, because I played in the back line with Harriet, and
Mhm.
she always said the first 15 minutes of this game is so important. Don't ever think about anything else. It's these first 15 minutes. And when we get past it, we'll look at the next 15. And that's kind of how I went into every game. Then it was like, okay, let's concentrate on the first 15 minutes. We won't concede, and then let's see what we can do on the other end. And I think it's so important to have that mindset. It's also difficult when you come up against, like Scarlett was saying, the higher Chelsea, City, Arsenal. Like it is difficult to do that, but it's very much so doable. And like you said, it kind of clicks a momentum shift then.
Mhm.
If you don't concede, you never know, you go and score, or you kind of keep the goals down. And that's kind of what Everton are, yeah, struggling with, because we have come on and said they've, yeah,
Yeah.
conceded really early. And it's actually kind of come from their own mistakes too. I think playing out from the back against teams where maybe you shouldn't do, play out from the
Yeah.
back.
Well, this was I was going to ask there based on your point. For the first 15 minutes, do you kind of throw your style of play out the window just to settle yourself into the match? Do you go long ball? Do you go really defensive rather than trying to become a ball playing team or an expansive team? I think we were asking for them to change tactics at some point. So is that something you could even do just to give yourself that hope within a game?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to respect who you play as well.
Hmm.
If you're up against the likes of the bigger teams for the first 10 minutes, yeah, let's not concede here.
Yeah.
Let's make turn them and see what they're like defensively as well. And yeah, I think you kind of have to do that in certain games, and yeah, see how that pans out.
Yeah, on the flip side, Liverpool would have been looking at this, thinking, here's here's a good 3 points for us to kind of reset and kick on from. Um, was it just that Everton banked up really well and they found it hard to break them down, or what do you think it was that stopped Liverpool from hitting the heights, Scarlett, against Everton?
I think it was just like consistent sort of a frustration setting in. I don't really think they created that many
Hmm.
clear-cut chances. Like if you look at it on paper, obviously Everton didn't deserve the penalty. Like we talk about VAR and stuff coming in, like it's very clearly outside the box, which is a different story. But yeah, I don't think Liverpool really fought as much as they probably should have. Obviously, you're kind of frustrated at feeling hard done by or whatever, but that happens before half time. You go in a half time, you say, if you're Matt Beard, like you're sitting down, you're saying, right, we need to forget about that. Obviously, the officials made a mistake. We have to get over it. That's life. but I just don't think they came out. I thought they came out of the blocks flying then after in the second half, but they just never really got going. And obviously they did create a few chances, but there was none that were really clear cut. And I don't even think it was due to Everton's. Obviously, Courtney Brosnan had a great game and they did have
Hmm.
a good defensive performance. But I don't think it was due to their strength and solidarity in defence. I think it was more so Liverpool's lack of creativity, which isn't something we've really seen from them. Like they're normally a good attacking team going forward. Like you've like Olivia Smith, who I think has been really, really good for them this year, and obviously Leanne Kieran as well. And I just think they lacked a bit of spark. And I think that was probably the reason they couldn't get a goal and get going.
Yeah, and sometimes you think, do play the occasion, do play. It's a Merseyside derby. Come out here and like get your tackles in, get the tempo up. And like you say, they were just a bit lackluster. Obviously, Matt Beard had some strong comments on the officiating. Fair enough, it was a howler. She was well outside the box for the free kick. But again, there was time to recuperate. And yeah, like it was Liverpool's own doing. They weren't clinical enough. And it was interesting to hear that Liverpool haven't beaten Everton since 2017 because in our heads, obviously, we're starting to see a gap. But I suppose traditionally Everton were the stronger team. Um, we spoke briefly about it, but there was a couple other games with our relegation battlers. So Villa 3-2 against Palace and Brighton 3-2 against West Ham. So we were served up a bit of a goal fest. Villa, obviously, we saw them draw with Man United last week, Jamie, and then they have finally got that win that they need. Do you think that this last couple of weeks and getting those 4 points is a little bit of a turning point? Because we have spoken about them nearly being good, but just to conceding a bit much, and still to concede two against Palace is probably not what they'd be looking to do. But I guess it was all about a win for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 3 points and kind of similar to Everton, but I think I would agree with what Scarlett was saying there, the difference between Villa and Everton. I think you look at Villa and you say, yeah, you have goal scorers in there. You you can count on these players to score goals. I think with Everton, you're kind of looking around saying, who's going to get us this goal? Who's going to get us these 3 points? And I think that will give Villa a lot of confidence now. And those 3 points take you up to eighth place. Like it's so tight down there. And as I said,
Yeah,
like getting the 3 points will make all the difference. And I think they had 22 shots with 12 on target. I
yeah.
mean, that's what you want in a game. You want shots,
Yeah,
you want
that's
your
higher than the likes of Liverpool. It's higher than those teams that are up above them. And like you say, if they win their next match and Liverpool don't, they jump down to sixth. All of a sudden, they've gone from relegation to mid-table, and then who knows, second half of the season.
yeah, and that's where the 3 points are vital. And like I said, that'll give them confidence. Their strikers, attacking players, just taking 22 shots. Like that's
Yeah.
what you see as a manager. And yeah, getting the goal late on. I mean, it was a great finish by Salmon, and yeah,
Yeah, it was a goal worthy of winning any game, and in any other week, Scarlett, she probably would have made team of the week just for that strike alone. But we did have a lot of goals at the weekend, and we had Brighton scoring three. Again, another really good win for them, and it's the difference between a team that are playing with confidence and the team that aren't, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's really it. Like West Ham, as we said before, like Katrina Gorey had the game of her life, but Brighton, as we keep going on about, has so much strength this season going forward and obviously defensively as well. And yeah, I think the big problem for West Ham this season has been late goals. And I even have it written here, like they've conceded three times in the 90th minute plus in games, and they've all been game deciders. So you're losing 1 point, you're losing 3 points. Like you need to be picking up those results late on in a game where you really have to lock up. We kind of seen that again at the weekend. Obviously, it was a comeback for West Ham, 2-0 down to bring it back was brilliant. But then Fran Kirby, obviously, with the winner late on in the game, like, and that's just when you have to lock up base. As we say, like, play the dirty game, get the ball long, try get your striker to hold it up, get anything on it. They've good, like West Ham have good players going forward, like they've Ueki and Asai as well. So like they've great players going forward. You need to get them to hold up the ball, keep using the game and get a draw out of that game because like Brighton are a good team and that would have been a great result for them. But yeah, I think Brighton's class just showed through on the day as well as we were saying. Like they had some great performers on the weekend. So I think overall probably deserved the win in the end, but West Ham probably count themselves a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, look, that again, it's kind of like Everton, but on the other scale, it's that mental resilience to see something out or to start a game well. Another team that did not start a game well, Jamie, was Spurs, conceding after 2 minutes. in the North London Derby against Arsenal. This was too easy for Arsenal, would we say? You'd hope, obviously, there's a bit of a gulf in class there between the two of them, but you always hope that on Derby Day you pull something out of the bag. Just wasn't there for Spurs this week, was it?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with you. I actually have it here. It was literally way too easy. Way too
Yeah.
easy. They just looked opened, like down through the middle. I think one goal came from right through the middle of Spurs. And yeah, it just looked really easy and kind of disappointing from Spurs. Like a derby like that, you want like the Everton and Liverpool, you want coming out, you want it. It's a derby day, you want to be fired up. And I think momentum obviously is with Arsenal, scoring 3 goals and obviously getting the goal so early on. Yeah, and Spurs kind of looked deflated then, but Arsenal are on a good run now. I mean they had a good bit of possession too. Shots on target as well. So yeah, it brings them up to fourth in the table. So I mean since kind of the manager has left, yeah, it's been a good few games for
Yeah,
Arsenal.
I think it was notable was the tempo that they started out. They were fizzing passes, and yeah, you're looking at some of Spurs' marking wasn't great till it. For the second goal, you said they cut through the middle. Mannion was left with space in the box, and she had two people who could have tracked her run. It didn't happen. The third goal, Scarlett, was again a really slick move, one-touch passes, and Spurs were just nowhere near that pace, and that's what Arsenal can bring. Is it just a case that the manager now needs to get them doing it more consistently? What's the kind of change you noticed in them?
Yeah, I think they're more expressive. I think they're
Hmm.
more confident, and I think that's obvious probably coming from a manager bounce. I think Renee Sledger's just done well with the job she's been given. Obviously, they'll probably go for a new manager soon enough, but yeah, I think they've just more flair to their game. They're more aggressive, and obviously they're taking their chances. They're becoming a more sorry, clinical team.
Yeah,
And yeah, that just showed at the weekend. Like they put the game to bed early enough, obviously getting the early goal. And as Jamie was mentioned there, like Spurs probably just didn't put up enough of a fight for them. And we spoke about like Everton, Liverpool, the sort of Merseyside derby, the North London derby. There probably just wasn't enough spirit in the Spurs team to sort of get back in the game when you're going 1-0 down that early. So probably yeah, just overall disappointing for Spurs. But again, another good display by Arsenal, a good confidence builder. And I think we're seeing now the Arsenal of old, maybe like the Arsenal that they can be with the quality of players they have. So they'll try to keep that up obviously and take it and go forward. I don't think you can really take too much out of the game other than Tottenham
yeah.
were really poor.
Yeah, and even small changes like putting Steph Catley in centre back, you've got another person who's very, very confident on the ball and just will bring it forward and adds that urgency. So again, you have to give credit to the manager there. We talked about Bombaster and the effect she's had on Chelsea, and any notions that Chelsea were going to go under a bit of a transitional period have been well and truly quashed. They beat their main title rivals at the moment, City 2-0, goals from Ramirez and Wrighton. City had possession, but you'd still have to say that Chelsea dominated in an attacking sense. Jamie, what impressed you most about Chelsea this week?
Yeah, yeah, like you said, City had more possession, but I think Chelsea were obviously more clinical in front of goal. Obviously Ramirez scoring and writing. I think Bunny Shaw was just not the usual Bunny Shaw that we see every weekend.
Hmm.
I think she probably should have scored one or two that she had. And I think for City, I think Lauren Hemp was just such a loss. I think
Yeah.
we've spoken about it, the goals that she creates and the assists. She got 3 assists last weekend or the weekend previous, and it was noticeable that she was majorly missed. Even just for the feeding balls into Bunny Shaw, I think that was yeah, a real miss for City. But I think we've said this in the team of the week. Ramirez is such a standout player for Chelsea, and
Hmm.
to come into that Chelsea team and to perform like that week in, week out is not an easy thing to do, and to consistently come up with the goals, especially against Man City, was such a big game. Yeah, so she played really well, and I think Wrighton as well. I don't think she gets the credit maybe that she deserves. Wrighton, I think she's such a good technical player. But yeah, I thought she was a standout too as well.
Yeah, I agree. For me, she's up there with Henp having started the league as kind of like the top two players. Another person who was missing for City was Alexandri, and Alana Kennedy came in centre back. And Scarlett, we've all had to mark people who are bigger and stronger than us, but is there anything worse than getting bumped off the ball and being face down in the muck and you see your striker taken off like the way that Ramirez did?
It was just pure brutality from Ramirez. Like I seen a post after, and it was the title was just like the bully. Like it's the player you want in your team. It's the striker that every manager dreams of. Like she was really, really good. Like she was brilliant, and the goal just sort of sums her up as a player. I did feel for Alana Kennedy. It was not a nice sight to see that ball hitting the back of the net. And the camera angle certainly doesn't make it look any better either.
No.
But yeah. As I said, just sums up the type of player she is. She's just an absolute tank.
And Bombastor, the first match, she had big shoes to fill, but she's the first manager to win her first 7 games in the WSL. So obviously a lot of credit goes there, but yeah, she's stacked. And City, few questions for City to ask themselves. They obviously the reliance on Hemp might be something to look at. Still didn't start Chloe Kelly in that instance, which, might be a bit of a strange one. She's still getting the nod for England. There's still trust there in her ability. We just haven't seen as much as her as we would expect. So maybe it'll be something that will happen throughout the season for City, but we will have to wait and see. And then the other game was Leicester 0, Man United 2. Plenty of shots by United, only 6 on target. They were worth their win, but again, a good mid-table kind of performance, I would say, Scarlett.
Yeah, and I think the sort of main thing to note for me was, I think it was Hannah Kane had a chance for Leicester in the first
did, yeah,
at 0-0, and it was an absolute sitter. And I think if you score that, the game's completely turned. Obviously it doesn't happen. Man United go on to win the game, but I think Leicester will really have to look at those situations and they'll just have to put them away, especially we're at the bottom half of the table. Like any points are crucial, as we've been talking about, like for the whole podcast. And in that scenario, I understand it's hard, easier said than done, but I think that chance goes in. It's a completely different game. But yeah, as you said, just a win for United, get them through. And I think as well, Jessie Ferreira in the team of the week, she's class to watch.
And she's someone you just want to get more consistency out of. I think we're still waiting for her to really, really take off. The 2 goals did come from Elizabeth Turland and Bizette, 2 summer signings, Jamie. That's obviously good to see, but they still look a little bit vulnerable on the counter. And obviously that's something that Mark Skinner might need to look at if they are going to challenge in and around that area that Arsenal and Brighton are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're sitting 5th now, kind of joint with Arsenal there. And yeah, like Turland has been a good signing, but you need to feed her more, like to get her on the score sheet more, as well as Bissett. But yeah, I think they are vulnerable on that counter attack and that kind of, would you say, midfield type of defensive area. If they could clean up that area, it's kind of
they have good players but we were saying it for a good while that they still look vulnerable. There still is something that when you look at the likes of Arsenal, that there's just you feel a lot more confident in those defensive areas with Arsenal, even when they weren't playing at their best. But look, they still ground out the result and they're still keeping the pressure on. I suppose that's the main thing for Skinner, for him answering all and any of his many critics, which he does have. Thank you guys so much for joining today and putting up with my very professional presenting. But I just want to thank you and the COYGIG Pod on Off the Ball is sponsored by Cadbury, the official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team. And if you do want to get in touch, if you have any questions for Jamie or Scarlett or anything related to the WSL or the upcoming Ireland games, please do find us on Twitter and we will chat to you all next week.
The COYGIG Pod on Off the Ball in association with Cadbury, official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.